I'm Darren Cox and we're here at the wonderful Barston Lakes. Lovely shallow place, but it's full of fish, full of carp of all sizes. Just such a wonderful venue. And it's a great venue to come to test things out and try and show people how we fish specific ways. One of the things I'd like to do today is explain how I get the most out of one line. And Barston's a really good example. There's a line at Barston which it's the same on many big venues, to be honest, for carp fishing. That line tends to dominate, and when you can actually get multiple styles of fishing working, you can even dominate even more on that line. I'm going to show you today how we do it. Like with any fishing, feeding is absolute key. And what you tend to find on venues like this is big pellets, 8mm pellets. When there's loads of carp in warm water, pellets dominate. Simple reason is you can catapult pellets out a long way. Wherever you catapult those pellets on a regular basis, those fish will stay and they'll be ready for them. So there's times, especially when the fish are feeding well, there's times that only that one line is productive. And that's why you really need to get to grips with how to fish it. And there's not just one way of fishing it, there's quite a few different ways. But the most important thing is to keep feeding. Constantly feeding, trying to understand how much you need to feed. So to kick it off, I'll try and explain how much I like to feed on a 5-hour match. I tend to like to break my matches down into segments. And the most obvious segments are like hours. So I can understand how much I'm feeding. It always comes with experience generally, but you can get a feel when you start catching fish or when you start seeing liners, you start to understand that the fish are there. But until you get those liners, you don't really know how much you need to feed unless you have experience of that venue. I tend to find by using a 1-pint tub, I've got plenty of 8mm pellets showing down here in another tub, but by using a 1-pint tub, I like to try and feed around a pint of pellets an hour, because I think that will give me enough feed constantly going through the water. And in match conditions, when there's other people fishing and feeding at the same time, you've really got to try and feed nice and steady away. And a pint is a good rule of thumb. There's days where you won't use a pint. For example, when you start catching fish, you can't actually keep feeding. The most important thing is, when you're not catching fish, you just keep trickling the pellets in all the time. 3, 4, 5 pellets. Whatever suits your catapult and the distance that you're fishing at. It's not a case of filling your catapult and lashing them out. It's about a constant trickle of feed. That constant trickle of feed, the noise and the bait falling into the water, as well as the bait being on the bottom, is what will catch you those big weights of carp. My bait choice, especially for places like this, big carp absolutely love these activated coarse pellets. They stink, they really do stink. I don't know what they stink of, but they catch me so many fish. They're nice, they've got like an oily feel to them, they go in beautifully, they catapult perfectly. So even in windy conditions, oh look at that, straight away. Even in windy conditions, you can be accurate with your feed as much as possible. And that's what it's all about. They have a lovely noise to them when they go in. There's just so many good things about them. And I think with them being slightly oily, I think they stay whole for a little bit longer than a lot of pellets. And I think that's quite important, because the carp, if the carp start to gill feed on dissolved pellets, then you can have all kinds of problems. That's a good fish, is that? That's a good fish. Some big fish in here. But, you know, they're hard enough to get into your peg, they're hard enough to get on the hook. So you've just got to be patient. This could be a 10-pound fish, it could be a 15-pound fish at Barston, you never know. So by rushing them and losing them, you could be costing yourself a match. There's plenty of pellets out there where I've fed now. So just by taking my time with this fish, it doesn't mean that I'm going to lose my fish in that swim. There's plenty of bait out there to look after them. If I can sneak a feed in, I will. But there's just something about these activated pellets. I know a lot of the lads use them now. They just have something about them. They're great on the pole because they just got a smell, and I honestly believe that it's about being slightly different in fishing. You know, when you're on a fishery where you've got to use fishery pellets, I understand you can't do a lot different. You talk about colorants and things like that, no problem. But where you've got a choice of feeding your own pellets, this is my first choice every time, right from the 2mm right to the 8mm. And for this game at Barston, for pinging, that pinging pellet line, they're lovely. So that fish still pulling hard, I can put a sneaky pouch full of pellets in there, just keep them going. And I'm not being ridiculously accurate with these pellets. Of course I want it in an area, but I want these fish grazing. These are big old fish, and you get them all on a tiny little area, you're only going to cause yourself problems. You get good carp swimming around, grazing like sheep in a field, looking for grass, looking for pellets. You get moving, and then that's when you catch a big weight. You don't catch big weights by sticking a load of bait down one hole. You just cause yourself more problems. This feed's going in an area, it's probably going in an area of 8 metres wide by 3 or 4 metres depth, and that's not a problem because I'm intending on getting a lot of fish in the swim. I'm getting loads and loads of liners, which is great news as well, you know. But the good news on a day like this is you can differentiate. The only way you differentiate between what's a liner and what's a fish in the mouth is it pulls your rod in, because that's just the perfect bite. And if you can have days like that, it's just wonderful. See, it's another big fish is that. You know, you don't need many of those to get a huge weight. And fish like this can eat a lot of bait as well. That's the thing, can eat a lot of bait. You know, you imagine I'm feeding a pint of pellets an hour. That fish can eat a pint of pellets. It's nothing. But if I put a pint of pellets in all at once, the chance that it could eat them all and go. By gradually just feeding and putting pellets in regularly, I'm keeping those fish in my swim. I'm keeping them looking for bait. There's enough bait out there to keep them looking. They'll find pellets if they keep going. And one of the things I am doing, I've just changed it up a little bit, is a lot of the time people will fish a boilie on this line. I like to change it up. I'm actually fishing with an 8mm cell pellet. Just something a little bit, it looks like the activated ones, but it's got a different smell. So I just like having something that it's fairly unobtrusive, but it's got that slight difference that just might catch you those fish a little bit quicker, and that's what it's all about. We've got to try and get them to feed over our feed and find a hook bait. And that, at the moment, that's why I'm just using a little 24-gram hybrid. Get a bit of micros on there. And it's just basically a target for the fish. You want the fish to find those micros as they're grubbing through. They'll suck the lot in, and then they'll suck your pellet in. Sometimes when you've got like a wafter on or something, they might just leave it alone. I mean, other times in very, very coloured water, I'll put a wafter on and catch straight away. But hook bait is a complete subject on its own, and you've got to be confident in what you're using on the hook. If you believe you're going to catch it, well, I have conversations with my mates and all the lads I fish with is, what did you catch on today? What did you catch? I caught on a yellow wafter, I caught a pink one, I caught on a white one. Some days you cannot catch on anything other than the one you believe is right. The one you believe is right, the catch on, it's right for you. So that's the one you use. Today I've gone in, I've put a wafter on, I've caught a fish, chucked out again and it's not gone round. So I've put an 8mm cell pellet on. I've had 8 fish in 8 chucks, just instantly, so I'm sold on that bait. And that's what it's all about. It's all about being confident in what you're using. Caught loads of fish on that 8mm cell, and I thought I'd nailed it, I thought I'd sorted it. It was brilliant, absolutely superb. But I've just had a spell for like 10 or 15 minutes. I was getting one a chuck, but I've had a spell for 10, 15 minutes where I'm getting loads of liners and I can't get a fish on the hook. So on my other hybrid, I've just set a pink wafter up, pink tuna, which is probably my favourite, tuna and pineapple. But if I want to get a bite, I put my tuna one on first and it's gone straight round. Couldn't write the script. And I was getting loads of signs, but there's something happened to the lake. There's been loads of fish topping and there's not as many topping now, but I'm still getting loads and loads of lines. So the fish are still in my peg, but I just want to try and suss out exactly what's happening with them. But that was a good start to have a quick change. And I think that's what you've got to do. You've got to keep change. You've got to keep, well, we say ringing the changes, but it makes so much sense. If you sat there waiting for it to happen, half the time it doesn't happen. But when you keep changing, you feel like you're actually trying to make things happen. You're still feeding, you're still doing the same thing, but just that little bit of difference often gets you that extra fish every now and again. I'm going to put a yellow one on now, just to see if that makes any difference. Because it could be that the fish have just come back or gone back on the bottom, but we'll give it a try. So I've gone from an 8mm cell pellet now to thinking I'm going to catch on a wafter. But I've just had a fish straight away on a pink wafter. I've got a yellow wafter on now. I'm just reloading my spare hybrid with a pink wafter again, because if I don't get a bite on the yellow one, I'll be thinking I should have the pink one on. And I'm going to have to satisfy my interest just to try and understand if it's making a difference. But they're great, they're lovely these. I mean, I fished them both with a spike and with elastics, because I think if you have one of each set up, then it's really versatile. You can put a pellet on, you can put a boilie on, you can put whatever you want on, you can even pull a bit of corn through, anything like that, just to try it. And if you get a bite, then you can change to, you know, like a standard spike or whatever you want to do. But there's definitely something in these colours. My go-to are yellow and pink. So you've got yellow pineapple, which I seem to have caught so many fish. Oh, thought that one meant. I seem to have caught so many fish on yellow this year. Probably fed more corn than I ever have in the last 2 years. It might be just me, but I think the yellow sort of sits nicely with it. Places like Larford, we catch loads and loads of fish on the yellow pineapple. It just works perfectly. If you're fishing, you know, we're fishing a lot more feeder matches now, and with these wafters, they just tie in so nicely with different baits. You know, we catch at Larford and here sometimes as well, catch it on basically on a 5 metre line, feeding lots of corn. The yellow wafter just sits up and the fish are able to pick your hook bait and your hook up much easier if it's a wafter than it is if it's a piece of corn, but it does the job because it looks like a piece of corn. Just ideal. So today I've explained about fishing 3 different styles of fishing over the one feed area, and mainly I've caught today on a little hybrid feeder, 24 gram hybrid feeder with micros around it, constantly feeding the 8mm pellets like I explained, but I've also set a bomb and a small pellet waggler up. Now, I've caught fish on every one of these methods today, but predominantly the best method has been the hybrid. Another day, you know, you can start on a hybrid and get size and catch a few fish, and then you feel like you need to change. And bomb is often a much better method. But you can't say it's the best method. It is what is best on the day. And without setting them up, you won't fish them. If you just set a method feeder up or a hybrid feeder, that's all you fish. You won't give yourself the option. And match fishing is about covering all your bases. It's about making sure you don't miss any options. That doesn't mean that you've got to keep chopping and changing all the time. Like I said today, I've caught a few fish on everything, but the hybrid's been by far the best method. So I've concentrated on that. But when things go a little bit quiet, that's the time to change something, because often when you're feeding those 8mm, often the fish come up off the bottom, and you can have a little run of carp on the pellet waggler, and sometimes you know you can completely change your stamp of fish. Catch 2 or 3 big fish on a pellet waggler, it makes all the difference. It's like catching 4 or 5 fish on a feeder. So until you try it, you just don't know. I've also mentioned about switching baits around. It's really important to keep trying different baits. One bait is often the best bait on the day, but if you don't keep changing, you'll never know. Oh, there's one on the pellet waggler now. So yeah, I just had a spell where it gone quiet on the... it's come off. I just had a spell where it gone quiet on the method, on the hybrid. So I just went on the pellet waggler, had one straight away. One of the things I do like to do as well is actually do a bit of meat, feed a bit of meat, but I tend to feed big pieces of meat when I'm fishing for big fish and feeding 8mm pellets. I do some 10mm meat, and generally that meat fires at a similar distance to 8mm pellets, so it's perfect. Don't put a lot in, but just every now and again put a bit in, and especially on a bomb I can switch to a piece of meat. And it often gets me 2 or 3 more fish, which is really important on those quiet spells. Now that was on the bomb on a piece of meat. I've been feeding meat all the time, just every now and again. And peg's gone quiet again, but I'm getting liners. Suddenly, not a bad fish on 10mm cube of meat. Just gives you that little bit of difference, you know, when you're not getting the bites. Again, it's back to just ringing the changes and making sure that you got something else in your locker to get a bite. And it's not a big fish, but it's a fish when it's all gone quiet. The wind's changed. Wind's completely changed direction. It's gone flat calm, and the fish seem to have gone with it a bit. I've had a few skimmers since I had a proper run of carp, but then I've just got this one out of the blue, which is nice. But I say out of the blue, I feel like I've made it come out of the blue because I've changed the bomb, put a different hook bait on, and you know, it's a standout hook bait. That's what it's all about. I actually chopped 2 tins up. You probably don't need 2 tins, but I wanted to get 2 different colours. I've got like the spicy and the betaines in the mainline meats, which are lovely because they're slightly different textures, but more importantly, they're different colours and smells. So I'm feeding my 8mm activated over the top, and every 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, doesn't have to be that often, I'm just putting like 10 or 12 10mm cubes in to give a little bit of difference of smell. So all the time that's going in, I'm not fishing it, it's just giving the fish a bait in the swim that is not an evident danger to them, which is often a way you can just get those extra few cute lads that have been sat feeding without you actually catching them. There he is, nice common. Some beautiful, absolutely beautiful fish in here. They're not daft, no carp are daft, but when you get them feeding properly, you can actually start to put a real weight together, and I think that's the secret. Get them feeding on your terms rather than their terms, and you've got a really good chance of catching a lot more fish. So just to recap over the day, we've covered all the options, the styles of fishing, and I've tried hard to tell you how important it is to feed those pellets, those 8mm pellets. That is the critical thing. All down one hole, 3 different styles of fishing, catch fish on them all, but there will be one that's particularly good. Make sure you've got the right pellets. As I said, these activated pellets are absolutely superb. 8mm if you're going big distance, even 6mm if you're on smaller venues, but they're superb. Just, it's so important not to sit there thinking, oh, I'll feed every now and again. Regimental feeding, keep that bait going through the water. That is what draws fish constantly into your peg. That is how you will catch more than other anglers, by correctly feeding. Just think about it on the venues that you fish. Would it work? What size fish you're fishing for? Get the right line, that distance that's comfortable for you to feed those pellets, and you will, I guarantee, it'll improve your catches whether you're place fishing or in matches.